And today we're going to be talking about the difference between a narrative story and an essay using our story 11 by Sandra Cisneros. So first of all, what is a narrative? And these notes you can glue right into your writing notebook and follow along as we go through it. So what is a narrative? A narrative tells us a story. A narrative is organized in sequence or in order, first, second, third. A narrative begins with characters, has a setting and a conflict. And the narrative develops the plot across the whole text with the character's struggles and motivation. A narrative concludes or ends with a resolution to the conflict, means the problem is solved at the end. And a narrative is written so that the reader can participate in the experience. You should feel like you know the characters and that you're part of the story. So if that's a narrative, what is an essay? An essay is organized around an important idea, so it has a main message. It begins with that important idea and an opinion or a perspective, so you're stating a main idea right from the start. An essay develops that important or main idea across the whole text using reasoning and evidence, lots of evidence. An essay concludes by returning to the important idea from the beginning. And an essay is written so that the reader can think about the important idea. You want the reader to feel your idea is as important as you think it is. So right now, I'd like you to stop and jot for 30 seconds and answer the question in your writing notebook. In your opinion, what is the biggest difference between a narrative and an essay? Feel free to go back to the notes or rewatch that part of the video before you write. So what is the biggest difference between a narrative and an essay? 30 seconds. Five, four, three, two, one. Go ahead and finish up your last thought or your last word. We can't wait to see what you wrote there. So what we're going to do is answer a couple questions. I'm going to demonstrate using the story 11, then you are actually going to read a literary essay about the story 11 that somebody else wrote and answer some questions. So here's a little bit what it'll look like. I'll demonstrate with the story 11. So my first question is, what are the events in sequence? So I know in the story, first, it's Rachel's birthday. Second, Mrs. Price finds a red sweater. So I'm going to write, red sweater, thinks it's Rachel's. And then after that, the third event is, turns out the sweater belongs to Phyllis Lopez. We know there's a lot to the story, but literally that is what happens in order in the story. Who are the characters, the setting, and the conflict? So I know my characters are Rachel, Mrs. Price, we have Phyllis, and Sylvia is in the story. Plus she talks about her mom. So those are the main characters that it talks about. The setting is in school. This is happening in the classroom. The conflict, we know there's a sweater problem going on, but the main conflict through all of that is that Rachel doesn't feel 11. She wishes she could be 102. Because we know she talked about how she maybe would have reacted differently, or she could have said something differently. So what is the plot? Very similar to the events in sequence. So I'll write, it is Rachel's 11th birthday, but she wishes she was older. She has an embarrassing moment in school when Mrs. Price says the red ugly sweater belongs to Rachel. And we know, we talked about yesterday, all Rachel could think to do was, and let me make this smaller, all she could think to do was wait until lunch so she could throw the sweater. And then finally, what is the resolution? The sweater belongs to Phyllis. Rachel still wishes she could be older to avoid that embarrassing moment. So now it's going to be your turn to answer some questions. You have a literary essay. It's not the actual story. It's somebody's main idea about the story, about the setting and the plot and the conflict. Please read that essay and then answer the following questions about it. What is the main idea? And what is the evidence to support the main idea in the literary essay? Go ahead and get started.